And this is another video of Quackaholics Anonymous, another episode on February the 8th, 2025. I almost said 2024. A month and a week into a brand new year that's off to a really chaotic start in the rest of the world. And on a more important matters, a week away from Valentine's Day. So if you have a Valentine and you need to get your shopping and Amazon in or whatever else you do, now would probably be the time to try to expedite that process. Anyway, that has absolutely nothing to do with what I want to talk about tonight, but just thought I would throw that out there as an important announcement. So this particular topic that I had in mind for this week, I'm going to, I guess, outline what got me to thinking about it, and then I'm going to make a few points that's going to seem unrelated to it before I lead to its conclusion. So if it sounds like I'm all over the place, I'm actually trying to build up something here. The title of this video is going to be about identity and deconstructing from identity and having your feeling about an identity or a strong inner sense in yourself of needing an identity. But rather than try to explain what it's all about, why don't I just dive right in? I do have an occasional critic that has to drive by or comment. I guess I could say on every other video, every once in a great while, they crawl out of the woodwork to tell me how I'm doing it all wrong and how I go about it all wrong and how I do this wrong and do that wrong and this wrong and that wrong. And, I'm not saying that you're mandated by law or mandated by God or anything else to watch these videos. For those of you who have accused me of being a cult and leading a Quackaholic Anonymous cult out here, you're not going to die if you never watch another one of my videos. You're not going to relapse. Nothing terrible is going to happen to you. If you stop watching these videos, then you just stop watching these videos. There's no sacred text. There is no rule. There is no dogma. There is no requirements for anything other than the fact that I am a guy with an opinion about the religious cult of AA, who I believe builds a pretty strong case as to why it's a destructive cult, and because of the fact that I feel it's a dangerous cult, because millions of people have been court-ordered into this thing. In and out, in and out. AA does not have a success rate. It has a churn rate. The treatment center industry really doesn't care about people getting any better. They're not interested in real solutions. And the cult of religion of AA is not interested in anything other than perpetuating the cult religion of AA. Now on to tonight's topic. By the way, if you do not like the way I make these videos, but you have strong feelings against AA, because unlike the cult religion of AA, everybody who's against AA is not required to all get along with one another. I have said on here many, many times before that I think we need multiple people making their voices heard out here, and we need multiple people talking about this topic. So please feel free to get a webcam, and please feel free to get a phone or whatever it is you want to do and broadcast. And there's another thing I was looking into called faceless YouTube channels. I kind of wished I had started it that way if they were even a thing at that time. Then you wouldn't have to see my ugly face on every video. You'd just get a black screen with a lot of voices and images and characters. But very often time, I do talk a lot. I do talk a lot about the people in AA that are detestable, the unsavory types, the gurus, the lowlives, the backstabbers, and everything else that comprise a large percentage of the population of AA. But it's very rare that I do talk about the few people, few and far between, that I ran into in AA that genuinely, based on what I knew about them, I only had kind of a superficial knowledge about them. They weren't close friends or anything like that, but who seemed to be just generally okay people that are probably comprise 90% of the audience that I talk to every day out here that, not every day, I'm already screwing up my words, but who I talk to on a regular basis through this medium. A large majority of people in AA, I don't believe, are these malicious, vile, disgusting human beings like the ones I give a lot of my time and attention to when I'm doing these videos. I think a lot of them are probably in the same boat that I was in for a long period of time. They didn't have any other solutions presented to them. They didn't know of any other way to try and quit drinking. They were unable to quit drinking or doing drugs or whatever destructive substances you were doing to yourself. And you were just kind of lost in the system, which the treatment center industry loves people lost in the system because they can keep them in there forever. It's kind of like the very first time I went to jail for a DUI. They actually told me, well, you're in the system now, you'll never get out of it. And yeah, a few arrests later and a few other probations and other things, I found out that that's kind of correct. But one of the people that I did meet in AA that seemed like a genuinely okay person. I never got to know her very well or anything like that, but it was in one of those meetings after the meetings, and people were standing outside, and they were in their little groups talking, and generally I was excluded from those little groups because I was branded, as I've said on here before, a chronic relapser. And she was telling me about one of these new age self-help type books you see, how to think yourself into success, or how to attract all this, that, the other. And it was, well, I don't think I really have to spell it all out for you. I think if you've been around anybody who's into the new agey type thing, you know what I'm talking about. But she didn't seem like a really malicious person. Like, I've known some new age people that are literally like borderline violently angry psychopaths, but they're in the healing crystals, if you know what I mean. And I'm sure if you're watching this video and you spend any time in AA, you know exactly the type of personality I'm talking about. In fact, one of them, who's not an AA person, but a supposedly anti-AA person, is like that, who spread all kinds of vicious, horrible fucking lies about me at one point, even from an anti-AA group. So yeah, there's no category of us versus them, in my opinion. There are anti-AA people, and in fact, there was one group I talked about on here who were absolute garbage human beings. But I was talking to her about, this spiritual kind of thing, and I just kind of said in a casually offhanded way, I said, well, if that's what floats your boat, that's fine. I mean, I don't have a problem with that, but I said, for me, I don't really believe in any of this spiritual stuff. It was one of the first times I'd ever said that out loud, because for a long period of time in AA, I was always trying to make myself believe this stuff that I couldn't possibly accept or believe, which in reality, you don't really choose a belief like AA tells you to. Get a God, find a higher power. You're either convinced that something exists or you're not convinced that something exists. And if you are convinced something exists, it's possibly a good idea to do an evaluation and see if you have good standards for evidence. But when I said this, her response to me was in not really even a condescending kind of way. I can't really say anything negative about this person, but she said, oh, I don't think you really believe that, which normally is a point of contention with me, because there's nothing that irritates me more than these cult members that'll tell you what you really think and what you really feel. But she just said, oh, I don't think you really believe that. And out of a sense of curiosity, I said back to her, I said, well, what makes you think I don't really believe that? I mean, what makes you think that I don't really think that way when I said I don't believe that? She said, well, you seem like too nice of a person to be that way. And it bothered me at the time. In fact, it really pissed me off. I didn't let her see that because she wasn't antagonizing me on purpose, but there was something about that really didn't sit right with me. And I didn't ever really know exactly what that was until much, much later, where I'm going to get to the rest of the body of the topic at hand tonight. I said I was going to point out this example and talk about something to do with identity and things of that nature, and then I was going to lead back. So the answer to this actually came to me not too long ago. In fact, I'll post a link to it if you want to see the discussion at hand. But I have referenced on here this particular skeptic atheist call-in show called The Line. And though I don't know any of these people, I'm not paid by these people, I'm not plugging their videos because of some endorsement or advertisement or anything else. Okay, they don't even know I exist. They don't know anything about me. But I do watch their call-in shows occasionally because of the callers who debate back and forth and things of that nature. But it was a particular subject, and I'm not going to say I'm qualified to speak on it, but it was a particular subject that perked my ears up because I realized that I had something kind of similar here going on. And this new flavor vape is great. I just can't stop hitting it, so apologies for that if it's distracting to you. But there was one of the main co-hosts, along with his African-American co-host, was doing one of these episodes, and there was a caller who called in and who said that they were a black person in the southern region of the United States, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's what they said. I'll have to go back and look to make sure. But they were saying that they were struggling with their idea of believing in religion, and they were struggling with their idea of accepting religion, that they were having a lot of issues about religion itself and the history of religion. Some of the things like colonialism and other things like that kind of played kind of a key role in their deconstruction. But they said something that really struck me, and I'm going to bring up my own experiences involved in this before we correlate back to the beginning of what I was talking about. But they said it's so ingrained he said it's so ingrained in my culture, Christianity is, and me as a black person, being a Christian is kind of like, it's kind of like just standard. It's kind of comes with a whole package of being an African American male in this country. If you're a Christian, despite all the negative connotations that also come with stereotypes, that is a big part of what he was saying is his cultural background. He said, I, as a proud black man, is how he worded that, struggle with that aspect of my identity, being Christian, because it's so ingrained and a part of the cultural experience. And the other caller on the line, who's, I can't remember his name, Durante something, who, I'll post a link, like I said, I'll know when I get the link up, but he was talking about his own struggles with that because he was a former Pentecostal preacher who later became a non-believer, and he was talking about the cultural thing, but he said when he got to delving deep into the civil rights movement and things like that, which religion has tried to erroneously claim an ownership of, that a large majority of that population were made up of skeptics and non-believers and people who were not involved in the religious aspect of the so-called, not so-called, but weren't involved in the so-called religious aspects of the civil rights movement, that even people like Dr. King and Dr. Martin Luther King dialogued with and talked to skeptics and non-believers. And the caller and I both were kind of blown away by this. I personally did not know this. I don't know a whole lot about that one particular period in history very much, even though anybody who's watched this channel for a period of time knows that I'm a big history buff. But I did not know that one fact about it. I knew, about the Jim Crow laws and the riots and the Freedom Riders and all those kinds of things, but I didn't know about that particular aspect of it. But then he goes on to talk about culture and religion and culture and the way that, even religion has hijacked culture in some ways. And I was thinking about how this related to me, like before AA. I grew up in a very Catholic Italian community where the Catholic Church was everywhere, and where anybody who knows anything about Italians knows a love of football was everywhere. And I'm not even going to get into Jets and Giants and all that kind of stuff for the region of the country I'm broadcasting about, which I have a few subscribers from there. They'll know what I'm talking about, just like they'll know about Taylor hams and pork rolls. But when I realized that I was at a crossroads in my own life, and I realized I no longer believed in Catholicism, and I no longer, and I've never been a football fan. That makes me a really bizarre human being, to be from where I'm from and not care anything about football or sports at all. There was a funny little upheaval inside of me during that time when I said, I just don't believe in this any longer. I don't believe in the religion of my youth. I don't believe in any of this, even though I had taken my first communion and I had my confirmation ceremonies, and I served as an altar boy. That's impossible to believe if you're watching the way I behave in these videos and what I talk about. But there was a big, huge, fearful thing inside of me. Do I no longer belong? Am I no longer a part of this community? What am I if I'm this kind of person? If I don't really fit in with the mold, if I don't really fit into this makes me an outlier. This makes me an outsider. This makes me somebody who's no longer a part of anything. What do I do with this? Am I somehow doing something wrong? I almost went the route of saying, well, I'm not going to believe in it any longer, but I'll continue to attend Mass and I'll continue to participate in those kinds of things. Yeah, only someone young and naive could do that. But I quickly realized that there was a lot of anger and a lot of hostility and a lot of rage inside of me, which, by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong going through the so-called angry atheist stage, although at that time I was not atheist, where you're angry at the religion of your youth because you feel it stole a large part of life from you, or at least from my perspective, what I went through with it. And I just realized I didn't believe any longer, but I did kind of feel culturally homeless for a little bit. If only I'd known what was coming down the road for me. But there's a lot to that, where religion is a big role in your community. And if you were raised in a strict Catholic environment like I was raised in, where everybody was doing this, even if it was, they were telling just a minute story about a near miss or a tragic accident. I was almost in a wreck this morning, and Father God and Sonny Jesus, I almost got killed out there, I mean, I was doing this for years after I'd even left. It was just a part of my own thing. But I was a little bit adrift. As a matter of fact, it was a long time later before I started really looking at philosophy and logic and those kinds of things. For years in AA, I didn't know what a logical fallacy was, but I was lost, kind of. I was kind of weirded about that. I was kind of like, well, I'm an outcast here, And it was kind of a bizarre thing to go through because I went through a deconstruction thing. I was like, well, a lot of these political opinions I formulated through the lens of the Catholic Church. A lot of these traditionalist opinions I hold. A lot of these ideas, about this borderline. It was different in those days, is all I could say before you jumped to any conclusions. But these opinions I had formed about this, alpha male masculinity type thing and the way a guy was supposed to behave and all of that. I mean, what if those are no longer valid now that I'm no longer viewing things through the eyes of Catholicism, traditional hardcore Italian Catholicism, where you're doing novenas and prayers to saints and lighting candles and all of that other kind of stuff and going to confessions? What do I really believe about the world around me? What do I really think? What are my real opinions about things? Are these political opinions and these religious opinions and these ideas about life, are any of them even correct? Are they valid? What if they're not? What if there's a different way of looking at things? What if there's a different way of seeing things? And I could say, and it's not an overnight thing. It's not something that happened overnight, but it happened, pretty quickly. I mean, not really pretty quickly. It was gradual. Over the years, I realized that a lot of my political opinions were changing. A lot of my ideas about life were changing. A lot of my things that I held dear, and this is just the way it is. God damn it, that's the way it is. That's the way we did it when my father was at your age, and and my grandfather was your age, and my great great grandfather was your age. We all did it just like this, and this is the way it is, and you will not question it. That was kind of gone, and I was kind of like, a lot of things shifted and changed. There's not a single political opinion or social political opinion that I have not examined, looked at, altered, changed, rejected, accepted, gone back to, come back away from, over and over throughout my life as I was doing all of this. And even today, there was a time, for example, when it come to like the U.S. military, we're right, they're wrong, we should all go to war all the time, we should wave the flag, we should plant that flag on every nation, we should crush them all, and I don't believe that at all anymore. That's one example out of many. I know it seems like I'm derailing off the topic, but trust me, now I'm diving into it. When I joined AA during a time period where I was kind of going through that already, and I was drinking and drinking and drinking. It hadn't become what it would become. And there was this eureka light bulb that hit me when I was in my first AA meeting. I don't have to feel culturally lost anymore. I don't have to ask these important questions any longer. I don't have to worry about that. I know what's wrong with me. I'm an alcoholic. And if you're an alcoholic, this is my culture. This is what's wrong with me. This is why I never could fit in with anybody, because I'm an alcoholic. Never occurred to me that maybe I was on the right path in life, to questioning everything I had been taught, to revamping and restructuring and rewriting my ideas about life. It was just, well, this is it. I'm an alcoholic. This is what it means to be. This is why I'm strange. This is why I don't fit in. I jettisoned the idea that maybe I was just a free thinker. Maybe I was the kind of guy that liked to weigh all the options and investigate it and know more about an opinion before forming it. I didn't look at it like that at the time, being young and naive like I was. I just looked at it as, I'm an alcoholic. That's what's wrong with me. And I realized real quickly in AA, which I believe was a major contributor to my destruction and my self-destruction in AA, that guess what? Just being an alcoholic, that doesn't mean anything. Because this new culture that I had joined, this new cult religion I had joined that promised to give me answers to all of my life problems, which, one lesson I've learned in older age is if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And abide by that. I believe if I had any pearl of wisdom to offer everyone, if it sounds too good to be true, run. I realized that somewhere along the way that if that didn't fit and that didn't work and I still wanted to drink and I still continued to want to drink, then I was truly hopelessly lost. I was truly hopelessly screwed up. There was something terribly wrong with me. There was something dire wrong with me, something incurable, something that couldn't be fixed, something that there was no way for me to get on top of or control of or anything like that. I'm getting carried away and talking too fast. I'll take a break. But that's how I normally talk in everyday life, by the way. But I tried to believe the spiritual crap, and I tried to believe it, and tried to believe it, and tried to believe it, prayed prayers, did all that stuff, even though I routinely get accused of not really wanting the program to work, even though I desperately needed it to work. Because for me, this was my lifeline. This was it. If I didn't have this lifeline, I was hopelessly adrift. I was lost. I was out there. It was over for me, right? End game, you know. And when I lost all of that, of course, and this is going to sound hokey, what I say right now, that was my greatest freedom of all, because I was able to be, like the meme says on the internet a lot of the time, it's okay to live a life that nobody understands. And that's perfectly fine. I don't have to meld into a culture. I don't have to meld into an identity. I don't need to conform to groupthink. Truly being an individual means being individually free, in my opinion, to think what you like and draw your own conclusions about things and etc. And it's your journey, you who are watching this, and my journey, me who is saying all this shit. And it's nobody who knows that better than you to decide it. Now, to get back to my original starting point, all the way from the beginning, all the way back, I know it sounds like I've gone all over the place, and I hope I haven't lost everybody and everybody's turned off, although I'm pretty sure this far into the video, nobody's watching at this point. They've been said, okay, I got enough of what he's saying. I get what he's talking about. Okay, next week, see him. Probably. But you're too nice to not believe in all that stuff. That was what I said at the beginning of the video that pissed me off. Not at her. But what irritates me about that is that notion that so-called spirituality, so-called religious thought, so-called religious belief, that these things somehow have a monopoly. I'm losing my voice, so I got to hurry this up. That these things have a monopoly over someone being nice, or someone being, like she said, you just seem like too nice of a person to be like that. As though if you're not that way, if you're not into this spiritual mumbo-jumbo, you must be a horrible person, a miserable person, a psychopathic person. And I realize a part of what irritates me about that is there is an almost perceived notion that that this spiritual mumbo-jumbo is what decides who is good and who is bad and who is in and who is out. And one thing that really struck me, the point that I kept in the back of my head when I started this video, I said, if you don't remember to make any point, make this one, is that in my lifetime, I've known people who were religious, who seemed like genuinely good people. I mean, I didn't know them 100%, but in my own family, like my grandfather, I mean, he was kind of rebellious. He was a drinker. He didn't really fit in with the conformed, somber Catholicism type thing, but he was a devout Catholic. And I viewed him as a good person, from my perspective anyway. I mean, I don't know, but I've met people in my life that were religious that were genuinely good people, right? I met people in my life who were genuinely religious people, devout Catholics, every day in the Mass, donating the large checks to the diocese that were complete and utter fucking pieces of shit. Total pieces of shit. And with all these sex abuse scandals that are out there in the open every day, it's going to be kind of hard to really defend the religion as being a beacon of morality for anyone. But I've known people who claim to be skeptics, and I'm going to use that word skeptic because skeptic, humanist, secular, atheist, these are all different words with different meanings. Even though generally when someone's angry on the political spectrum, oh, you godless, skeptic, secular, humanist, atheist, scumbag, communist, whatever. I mean, these are all different words with different meanings, but I'm going to say skeptics. I've known skeptics that I don't like at all, that I really don't. There's something about their personality, their demeanor, the way they behave that I really can't stand them. And I'm sure you've deduced by now, if you've been watching these videos for any period of time, I got a lot of fierce likes and a lot of fierce hates. I'm not one of these people who believes hate and love is almost the same thing. Nah, I gotta tell you, there are people in this world I absolutely love, and there's people in this world I absolutely fucking hate. Not to do like Robert Mitchum with the tattooed fingers and the Night of the Hunter, but I can tell you my feelings towards these two different people, very, very different. But I've known skeptics who I liked. I've known, or what I would call good people. I've known Christian people that are good people. I've known believers who were shitty people. I've known skeptics who were shitty people. I've known, believers or Christians or whatever you want to call them, who are genuinely horrible people. So it sounds to me like, this is the point I wanted to drive home, what you believe has very little to do with what kind of person you are. Uh, if you know good people and bad people in religion, and you know good and bad people in the skeptic community, then how you view the world through those lenses has very little to do with whether you're a garbage human being or not. Now, it is true the large majority of garbage that I met in AA who seem to thrive there, a case could be made whether or not it turns you into that kind of a person, whether religious cults do that to you. But I don't know if belief itself is a good judge of character. And this idea, like the lady said, you're too nice of a person to believe that way. That's a faulty way of looking at things. That's a faulty way of viewing me. You're saying that you can't possibly imagine a good person or a happy person that's not buying that bullshit. For example, for as long as I can remember, and I got a fairly good memory. I don't know if I have a larger hippocampus due to the nature of my job or what makes that possible, but I can remember pretty far back. And as far back as I can remember, I've always been an animal lover. Okay, I was always an animal lover when I was a little bitty kid. I liked the cartoon animals more than any people, because, I loved the idea that animals could talk or something like that. I didn't love animals and have always loved animals because of some spiritual thing that was commanded to me to do that. I didn't do that because the religion that I was raised in commanded me to do that. I did that because that was just kind of who I am as a person. And it just kind of irritates me that society perpetuates this narrative that if you're not one of these spiritual people or religious people, or at least have some kind of bizarro, ephemeral, I didn't say that word correctly at all, but anyway, this idea of a conscious universe, an electric universe or something, then you must be a miserable, bad person. And I think there just needs to be more and more pushback against that. You can get sober without being in a religious cult. You can quit drinking and quit doing drugs, or even moderate, even though they tried to bury that fact for years, without a religious cult. And, I've talked way too long, and nobody's watching at this point anyway, but chime in the comments. Let me know what your experiences are with this whole identity and the way AA tries to hijack your identity. Do you feel kind of more free and independent now that you're free in a cult and can make your own decisions and choose your own path in life, and maybe your path leads you to a religion or away from religion or whatever? I mean, it's your life. You only got that one to live. It's not my life. Let me know what you think, and see you guys hopefully next week.